Welcome to First Things First. It is a Monday morning. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We are coming off a tremendous weekend of World Cup action, which was fun to watch.
You watched it with your dad.
I watched it with my dad. I tweeted that he
great.
made me watch in Spanish because he felt like it was more authentic. I didn't know what the hell was happening, so Nick was translating and tweeting to me.
It was great. Jen and I had a little text back and forth during the England game. Your team,
my team,
one more game away from a World Cup final. See, you have a good weekend.
Great weekend.
Yeah?
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Good deal?
Don't tell us anymore.
Well,
Let me guess.
The people don't come to hear my weekend. They come here. Man, what's Kawhi doing? Where's he going? East Coast?
Right.
West Coast? What side he with? Tupac? Biggie?
Well, let's find out right now.
Things we already know. Kawhi Leonard wants out of San Antonio and would love to land in Los Angeles. Could be with the Lakers. Could also be with the Clippers. Things we didn't know, it could now be with the Philadelphia 76ers. According to a report, Kawhi would consider signing a long-term deal with Philly if he's dealt there. So, CC, we've been going back and forth on what Kawhi and his team and his people really want. Are you buying that Kawhi would sign in Philadelphia with the Sixers?
No, I'm not buying the report because I haven't heard any information that would drastically change Kawhi and his group and what they're trying to accomplish. So there's going to be a lot of reports out before he gets traded. But I haven't heard anything that would make me want to believe this to be true. Kawhi's not trying to join some super basketball team. He's not trying to join some organization. He's just trying to go to Los Angeles. He doesn't have stipulations. Who's the coach? Who's the general manager? Who are the other players? He just wants to go to Los Angeles, that being the Clippers or the Lakers. So I wouldn't read too much into this. I believe there's a lot of things that people might want to get Philadelphia or someone from the East involved because they don't think that Pop will trade him to the Lakers or trade him to the West because that's what San Antonio said initially. But Kawhi has the leverage in this situation. You are really taking a tremendous risk if you do pull off a trade, that being to Philadelphia or to someone else in the Eastern Conference.
I understand why Philly would make sense from a lot of people's perspective, not only because they do seem to be one superstar away from being the clear-cut best team in the East and a real contender potentially, but also who's the head coach of the Sixers? Brett Brown. Where was he? The Spurs. The Sixers team doctor is the doctor that probably knows more about Kawhi than anyone. Not that they're including the doctor in these discussions, but Dr. Jonathan Glashow is the doctor Kawhi saw when he was in New York. He's the Sixers team doctor. But I think we're in a place where right now, both sides of this equation, be it the Spurs and Kawhi's side, we've got to be careful with any of these reports and asking, so who potentially could benefit from this information being out there? And this is one that you could make the case either side does. You can make the case the Spurs would want this out there because it might make the Lakers have a greater sense of urgency. But if Kawhi really is dead set, as Cris has reported, on the city of Los Angeles, then you could also think that Kawhi's people would want this out there for the same reason. So the Lakers would have more of a sense of urgency because Kawhi is not set on getting to Los Angeles eventually. He's set on getting to Los Angeles immediately. But we also have to remember that just 4 days ago, where the Sixers were at was not even including Fultz in a trade for Kawhi Leonard. And so my guess is that the Sixers not wanting to include Fultz, the Celtics not even wanting to include Jaylen Brown, set the tone for San Antonio or the Lakers to revisit San Antonio and say, we are your best option, and maybe, once again, not give them the offer the Spurs want, and now this information comes out.
So sticking with the Sixers, though, the report is that the Sixers would be willing to offer a ton, whether it's Markelle Fultz or not. The Sixers are willing to offer a ton in order to make this trade happen with the Spurs. And you wonder if it is maybe the team doctor because they have a connection, or the coach because they have a connection, or maybe it's just that of all the teams out there, maybe the Sixers offer Kawhi the best chance of winning, or is that not even factoring in here at all?
Well, you could probably say it from any other trade. Well, what would a player like Kawhi, what would change him from being Los Angeles, a championship team? But I mean, and the people that I've talked to, this was never part of the conversation. So I can understand Nick in his theory. Okay, who releases this? Who's it better for? But for me, Kawhi, and knowing the people he's associated, they're not playing any games. Like, Kawhi Leonard's not that type of guy. His agent's not that guy. His uncle's not that guy. So why would they want to send a message? Right. To me, it's been fairly clear. I want to go to Los Angeles. Well, Kawhi said he wants to go to the Lakers. No, they clarified it. No, Kawhi wants to go to Los Angeles, that being the Clippers or the Lakers. So I don't even see a benefit for them releasing this information, because what it would make them inconsistent. So I think that people will be able to shoot holes in their theory. Kawhi's going to get criticized a lot. And when you're getting criticized, I don't want to think you want to send out a message that can be misinterpreted.
Would Kawhi make the Sixers immediate contenders, despite whatever the Sixers would have to give up?
Listen, well, they're not giving up Simmons or Embiid. We know that. So it would Kawhi, Embiid, Simmons,
okay,
that
so
big
those
three.
Three.
If they got him just for the year, right? Because that's what no disrespect to Chris Haynes' report. If they were to trade for him, he would go play for them. It would just be for the year. Here's the thing. I think it would make them clearly the second-best team in basketball. They jump over Houston. I think that they jump, if they're not already ahead of Boston, they jump over Boston. And in a normal year, of course it makes them contenders. I question whether anyone can be a contender. I talked last week about would the Eastern Conference starting all-star team be a contender against the Golden State Warriors? Like, because of what the Warriors did last year, and that they replaced their biggest position of weakness with the best offensive center in the league in Boogie Cousins, I don't know that we're going to have another contender this year. But I do think, even if it's just for 1 year, Kawhi plus those guys would be the second-best team in basketball. I do believe that.
Yeah, you definitely have to consider them contenders. Anytime you can get to the finals in Eastern or Western Conference final, you got 4 teams left. All 4 of those teams are legitimate contenders. Now, I would disagree with Nick that I believe that Golden State, because I know they can't get better on the defensive end with Cousins. Based on the numbers, they can't get better on the offensive end with him. So if you talk about a year that something can go wrong, or an injury or something like that, I think it's more likely now, because now we're in year, they're going for 3. They've just got 3 or 4. Now they'd be going for 4 or 5. So I think it's more likely some of the situations that you have pointed out in the past as far as championship teams, I believe that's on the board now for the Golden State Warriors.
What about playing style, Nick? How would Kawhi's playing style fit into
I think there's a reason that people, even though LeBron's clearly better than Kawhi or Paul George, there's a reason some people thought that the Sixers should be targeting Kawhi or Paul George over LeBron. Why? Stylistically, because he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands, because he is a knockdown shooter on a team whose starting guard, and Ben Simmons is obviously the opposite of that. And I mean, he's a better three-point shooter than LeBron. And he also,
we got to defender.
Well, that's what I was just about to get to. That was the Sixers' identity last year.
Yes.
Was their defense. Like, we talk about Ben Simmons' inability to shoot and Joel Embiid going 20 and 10. They were the number 2 defense in the NBA last year from Christmas on. And so you would be adding the best perimeter defender in the league. It would become potentially a generationally dominant defense.
Ben Simmons at the point, all right? Covington will probably be gone. Kawhi at the 3. Joel Embiid at the 5.
Saric is probably in there.
Yeah, he's going to be the 4. So they would suffocate Boston. I mean, how would you like Kyrie Irving have to be guarded by Ben Simmons, and also he got to guard Ben Simmons on the other end? That's not who they're going to put in the paint to be able to stop Joel Embiid. And Kawhi, and what we've seen with Kawhi that he doesn't get credit for now, of all the top 5 players, he's been the least maintenance of all the players. So there's a number of reasons why he fits in well with Philadelphia.
The Sixers last year had 3 guys get all defensive team votes, and Simmons, Robert Covington, and Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid almost won Defensive Player of the Year. If they were to add a guy who's won 2 Defensive Players of the Year, we're talking about defenses that at least talent-wise would rival, like the Ben Wallace Pistons of 12, 14 years ago. Like, they would be as good 1 through 5 defensively as any team we've seen in, I would say, in the last 15, 20 years. Now, the Sixers would have to think that it would be worth it for a 1-year rental.
Right.
They would have to be comfortable with a lot of things to go about it, because that's the part of this that has been kind of left out. We all know Kawhi wants to get to Los Angeles. Would he play for a different team next year? And what would the team give up if they think they are only going to have him for the 1 year.
Or they could hope and pray for the Paul George scenario, whereby he told everyone he was only going to play in Los Angeles, and somehow the Thunder convinced him to say. All right, we're going to talk more about this coming up. On the other side, though, how much is Boogie Cousins sacrificing to win a championship with the Warriors? Next, this is First Things First. All right, new topic.
New thing.
New thing. Oh, the whole league. Whole league. Work on your jump shot, except for the Warriors.
Word association. I say the word Warriors. You say what, Nick? Okay, awesome. This went well. Super team, perhaps? Dominant?
I thought it was rhetorical.
Unbelievable? It was not. DeMarcus Cousins, Boogie, newly a Warrior would say. Scary, as in their potential. Boogie says it'll take a lot of sacrifice, and there are games where he might only take 4 shots. Taking 4 shots happened just 4 times in his 535-game career. So, Nick, how hard will it be for Boogie Cousins to adjust to a much lesser role with the Golden State Warriors?
I hope it's not that hard, because it should not be incredibly difficult to do something that is exactly what you signed up for. So, like, later in the show, I know we're going to talk about Kyrie and LeBron. Kyrie signed a long-term contract extension before LeBron got there, right? Before LeBron came back. A lot of Kyrie's complaints would ring hollow to me if he signed it after LeBron. Boogie signed with the Warriors knowing who's on the roster, knowing they're back-to-back champions, knowing he's coming off an injury. Also knowing, I would imagine from his representation, that, DeMarcus, it is not about your points and rebounds and assists this year. It's about how healthy you are at the end of the year, and are there reports that you are bad for the locker room. If you're healthy and those reports aren't there, guess what? You got your $100 million. So all logic dictates it shouldn't be that difficult, that he wouldn't sign up for this if he didn't think he could handle it. And nothing has changed between when he agreed to go there and right now, where it's like, oh, now he's going to have an even lesser role. This is what he signed up for.
Well, Nick, let's not forget that he did make this decision in a panic. So he hadn't had a whole bunch of time to think about this.
That's a good point.
I totally disagree with you. And also, I'm from the school of thought that I know it's harder to play with great players than it is to play with bad players. And for the most part of his career in Sacramento, he's played with bad players. The first thing the players do after every game is they go into the locker room and they're issued several pieces of white paper. Yeah. And they give them out. And you know what the guys do? They sit down and they start to read. And you start to see, I only played 14 minutes. I only had 4 shots. So I believe this is Boogie's greatest challenge since he's been in the NBA. Because when the stat sheet doesn't say you had a great game, all you can do is tell people, oh, man, I'm great here. I'm having a great time. Oh, it doesn't matter the stats. Why they keep these then? These stats matter. And you're going to find out, and he and a lot of other people are going to find out, it's really hard to play with great players because all that sacrificing, every player is not willing to make those sacrifices. Like Draymond, where does he go? From 12 points down to 8? Y'all think he's going to like that? Now, Clay, this is in the last year of his contract. Now, what should he do? You think Durant? He already came down from 30 to 28 to 26. How much further KD got to keep going down? So when you play with great players, it's just so easy. People say, you know something, this game's so much easier. No, it's not. Because there's less shots, there's less glory to be spread around, and that stat sheet at the end of the day, when they look at that, which all the players do, he's going to have a problem justifying his decision because they are the huge favorites to be able to win. So what does he gain night in and night out if the stat sheet don't reflect that he's a... Because I'm getting away from these max contracts and, oh, this guy's definitely going to get paid. Because I've seen players that we tried to map it out, that they were going to get a max contract, and they didn't do it. We thought Capella, oh, man, Phoenix going to give him a max contract. It didn't happen. Isaiah Thomas, oh, he got injured. Oh, now he got traded.
And now Isaiah Thomas don't have any contract right now.
Absolutely. So I've seen enough examples in the last couple years in the NBA to not think, oh, no, it's guaranteed. Definitely going to get a max contract. People are going to love his image and everything. Boogie's going to do well in this situation.
Do you agree with what Nick said, though, that the two things that are most important or should be most important to Boogie are not what's on the stat sheet, but staying healthy and being a good locker room presence?
Oh, yeah, it sounds great. It sounds great. Put it on a card, send it to Hallmark, they'll sell a bunch of them. But the reality is we're human beings. He's a very emotional human being. And he's not used to winning. The Warriors are used to winning. So they're used to coming in, and you know something? Clay didn't get the necessarily shots that he got. He's like, I got another game. It's cool. I've had a year to adjust. This is Boogie. What, does Boogie start?
What?
Do you start
Steve Kerr said yes. Steve Kerr said he is going to start him.
Of course, you have to start him.
Right.
The reason why is because you don't want him to look at that stat sheet and be like, 20 minutes, 18 minutes. I believe it is going to be an issue.
All right, so the few really interesting things you said. One is about the Warriors being the prohibitive favorites anyway. What Durant did have going for him in the move is he got to at least say, or not that he publicly said it, but it was said for him, man, they lost last year. They needed another piece. They needed another guy. They needed something more to get through LeBron. Even though they'd already won one title, even though they'd won 73 games, even though a lot of people thought it was disingenuous, you could make the case. They weren't the two-time defending champs who had just swept the NBA Finals. The reason that I said I don't know that health and being a good locker room presence is what's most important to Boogie. I said his agent should be communicating to him. That's what's most important to the league. The league, whomever's going to sign him next year, and whether it's a max contract or not, a guy that's 28 years old, if he is healthy and he doesn't add to his bad reputation, he's going to get an enormous deal.
My problem with relying on an agent is, first of all, Boogie don't work for the agent. The agent works for Boogie. And the agent hadn't been very, very effective throughout Boogie's career. Because I'm sure he's been telling Boogie, this is a big year for you, Boogie. We don't need you to get thrown out the game. We don't need you to be in a dispute with the organization. We need you, Boogie. They've been telling Boogie that his whole career. Has it worked? It worked last year. That was the only year that people were saying good things about Boogie Cousins.
And so the other thing, though, that I'll add is this is, for him, you could argue something of, if we're worried about how much he's going to deal with not being the focal point of the offense, this is one of the only places he wouldn't be the focal point of the offense. But it's because they don't need him. They are not going to rush him back. They can be very slow with him. And at least early on, Steve Kerr can say it's about the injury. It's about the injury.
Limit your minutes because
now,
of the injury.
if Chris's concern comes up in February, March, April, when he's fully healthy and saying, I can do it, I just look at the Warriors and I said, last year, my biggest criticism of Steve Kerr is, why are they playing any minutes without Steph and KD on the court? And now in those minutes, they can just run everything through Boogie Cousins. They can still find moments of the game where he is the focal point of the offense. It won't be anything like what he was used to in Sacramento or New Orleans. All
right, let's take a break there. Coming up, was Kyrie upset at the first notion of playing with LeBron? Get some insight into the relationship next on First Things First. It's now time for your World Cup wake-up. The semifinals are set. France knocked off Uruguay. They'll face off against Belgium, who took down Neymar in Brazil. That match will be tomorrow on Fox. On the other side of the bracket, England, who topped Sweden, and Croatia, who beat Russia in a thriller that came down to penalty kicks. That match is on Wednesday. Bunch of great matches heading into the semis. CC, who do you like in the semifinals?
Ooh, it's going to be tough. England has tremendous momentum. France, really, really talented against Belgium. I'm going with France-England final.
I think France is the most talented team left in the tournament. I also think the second most might be Belgium. That left side of the bracket's been the tougher one. I agree with you on France. Croatia, man, feels a little destined. Back-to-back wins and penalty kicks, same guy hitting, and it would come down to the very end of penalty kicks. That Croatia-Russia game was, this World Cup keeps setting a new bar as far as drama at the ends of these games. That Croatia-Russia game was awesome. So I'm leaning France-Croatia at the moment. I probably could be swayed, but that's right now where I'm at.
4 great teams. You can't go wrong.
Absolutely.
It's going to be 2
and
great
it's been
games.
Awesome.
Yeah,
it
really
has.
has.
It's been so much fun to watch.
All right, time now for some stories to start your morning. With Jason Witten retiring, the Cowboys have a void to fill when it comes to team leader. Sean Lee is up for the challenge. The linebacker says he wants to step into that role. CeCe, can Sean Lee fill the leadership void in Dallas?
No. Because no offensive player is going to be listening to a guy playing on the other side of the ball. Like, I could understand if there was another linebacker that had retired, and he'd be like, yeah, I'm going to step in that place, the things I communicate. But it's hard to communicate unless you're a great leader on the other side of the ball. You can communicate to your group. You can communicate to that unit. But it's hard. You have to be a great communicator, and they have to have a lot of respect for you. So I wouldn't try to replace what Witt did on the offense.
See, who was the leader of the Cowboys defense last year? Sean Lee, probably, right?
When he's in there.
Right, absolutely.
But he's not an outspoken guy. Just being a good player is not always enough to be a leader.
Okay, fair enough. I would imagine it was Witten just because he's so long tenured and he's arguably the best player on their defense when he's out there. Point I'm making is he's already the leader, or one of the leaders in my eyes, of the defense. That void on the offense, he can't do both. It's just exactly what you were saying. That void's going to have to be filled by Dak and Zeke. Whether they're ready for it, whether they want it, I don't know. But your quarterback and your best player, those guys got to do it when you lose Dez and Witten. There's no other way around it.
The Jets hope they got their quarterback for years to come with the 3rd overall pick in Sam Darnold. According to veteran Jets quarterback Josh McCown, who plays right next to Sam Darnold, they've got, quote, the right guy. CC, what a realistic expectation for Darnold this season?
For him to be the starter, and you like him to play maybe 12 games, 10 games, not get hurt, have a great experience and the Jets and their fan base realize, man, we do have the guy in the building who's going to be the face of our franchise. I believe he is in the right spot. He's got the right nucleus of veterans around him that I believe give him the balance. A younger Teddy Bridgewater, an older Josh, and when you have that older guy, that senior leadership telling the rest of the team, because he's not only telling the media, he's telling the rest of the team, this is our guy. Let's get behind him. I believe they're doing the right things there.
I think the only key stat to look at is the one you mentioned, games started. Because while he has, I think you could argue, the ideal quarterback room for a rookie quarterback, he has the opposite of ideal wide receiver room. A couple doors down, whomever they're trotting out there, the guys are going to have to catch balls from him. So statistically, he could have a tough season. And that wouldn't necessarily be an indictment on him. So it's how early the coaching staff thinks he's ready to be an NFL starter. I think 10 to 12 games would be a great mark.
All right, moving on to hoops. With LeBron James headed to the Lakers, the Cavs have officially transitioned into rebuilding mode. Apparently that process does not include trading Kevin Love unless the Cavs are blown away by an offer. Nick, what do you think? Should Cleveland hold on to Kevin Love this season?
Absolutely not. It's important to remind the audience that if the Cavs if they're decent, if they avoid the top 10 of the draft, they lose that pick. Now, by the way that pick is protected, if they're in the top 10 each of the next 2 years, they never lose it. So, they're doubly incentivized to bottom out. Build around Colin Sexton, which I know sounds tough, but that's what you're going to have to do. Kevin Love, you're not going to be a contending team either way.
Right.
You might as well supercharge the rebuild process, and Kevin Love is an asset to the right team.
Yes, and you need to trade him while he is an asset. I do believe being in that top 10 is very important to him. If you're trying to rebuild, you need to be able to create assets. Kevin Love is really the only tradable asset that you have. I would get rid of Kevin Love.
All right, Tony Parker's tenure with the Spurs is coming to a close. After 17 seasons, as he heads to the Charlotte Hornets next year, Parker's San Antonio resume includes 6 All-Star appearances, 4 NBA championships, a Finals MVP. He's also proficient in word processing. Don't we always see it at the bottom of resumes? Nick, how will you remember Tony Parker's career with the Spurs?
I mean, this guy's a champion. This guy is no question Hall of Famer. He was the engine that drove the offense without ever being the best. Maybe 1 year you could argue he was the best player, but probably not. Guy's also Finals MVP. I was very surprised he's not finishing his career as a Spur. In NBA history, by the start of next season, there will have been 6 guys ever who played at least 17 years in the league, all for one franchise. Parker was on that list, along with Tim Duncan, a Spur, along with Manu Ginobili, a Spur. So not only this Spurs era had half of the all-time guys who had been with one team for their whole careers for this long. And so I understand Charlotte, the former Spurs head coach, is there. Nicolas Batum, who's probably the second greatest French player ever, is there. I get that. But this was I thought Parker was going to be a lifer. I thought he was going to be a Spurs lifer, like I believe Manu is, like Duncan was. And the fact that he's not is really surprising to me.
Yeah, I'd have to really give it some deep thought. Is he a Hall of Famer? To me, he was a good player playing the great situation. He benefited from being on San Antonio. He benefited from the system and also their overall development of European players. To me, he'll be part of that European players that influenced the NBA. So that will be part of his legacy. When you're playing with Duncan, when you're playing after Robinson, you're playing with Kawhi, because I thought that he had the potential to be able to retire San Antonio, but when you play 17 years and you want to keep playing, the last 2 years, though, he's only been just a shell of himself. And if Kawhi is still there and they have one of the best players in the world, then I believe he might have a chance to play another year.
Well, the other part of this that I did think was interesting is how much did the Spurs, when they were doing the math of, do we want to match the offer he got from Charlotte? Because I'm very confident for the same money he would have stayed. How much of the math was, we like Dejounte Murray, he is not the player he once was, basketball decision. How much of it was, if we have any chance of salvaging this with Kawhi, does it raise our chances if he's no longer here? If the guy who came out and said my injury was 100 times worse, if the guy who made some of the most harsh public comments about Kawhi, if he's not here, does that give us even 5% better chance to fix this with Kawhi? I wonder how much of that was their math. Because when I saw this, I thought about that, and Tony was instantly asked about those Kawhi comments, and he talked about that.
He said they were blown out of proportion.
He said they were blown out of proportion, but he also said, I was asked by a journalist, I said my injury was 100 times worse because it was. I was being honest. I mean, he said they were blown out of proportion, but then he also said
100 times.
Right. I mean, he also said that I believe what I said and that what I said was correct. So he didn't exactly walk them back, even though he thought they were blown out of proportion.
Just quickly before we move on, do you think Tony would have liked to have stayed in San Antonio if they matched the offer?
Of course. I mean, he's going to Charlotte. Charlotte's not a playoff team. There is a guy he's familiar with being the head coach. Of course he wanted to stay there, but that wasn't extended to him. But as far as him leaving, better chance for Kawhi? No. I asked him that question.
Okay.
I asked him that question. No.
So all right, so there's that.
All right.
Kawhi gone, man.
Okay. Yeah.
With his two groins.
With his two groins.
Okay.
That's an off-the-air joke that I love so much.
To another one. Hey, if you know anything about me, you know I'm constantly worried about the relationship between LeBron James and Kyrie Irving.
It's true.
It is true. Ask
Constantly
Nick.
anxiety,
Always
panic attacks about it the whole night.
About it. Apparently with good reason. According to Jason Lloyd of The Atlantic, we are learning now that Kyrie never wanted LeBron to come back to the Cavs in 2014, saying they didn't need him. Keep in mind, Kyrie won his only title with LeBron and the Cavs in 2016. So, Nick, we've been following this a long time now. What do you make of Kyrie not wanting LeBron?
I mean, you could say it's a little crazy that a guy who, in his 3 years in the league, not only never in the playoffs, but they were averaging 28 wins a year. They were 78 and 152 through 3 years, and it's not like they had this great turn on the horizon. If they weren't getting LeBron, they were getting Gordon Hayward. And by the way, Kyrie was very excited about getting Gordon Hayward. David Griffin's talked about this, that they had Gordon Hayward locked up, and then they had to wait on Gordon Hayward. So listen, people can judge this or not like this. Kyrie wants a lot of the things that go along with being an NBA player. One of them is being the star. Kyrie's dad didn't like that he didn't get a job or didn't have as much say with the organization, while LeBron's guy Randy Mims did. Kyrie didn't like that Ty Lue went to him and Kevin Love and basically said, set your egos aside, work this thing through with LeBron. There were a lot of really interesting nuggets in this. It was the three people that cover the Cavs every single day did a 3-hour radio show that was then turned into a podcast, and they talked about a bunch of stuff. Kyrie was upset that the media focused on LeBron's social activism and his flat earth stuff. And I mean, you can say, well, of course they're going to focus on the flat earth stuff, but a lot of these things were building for a long time. And the fact that now we know they started off on the wrong foot, because Kyrie signed that extension believing this is my team. We'll add pieces, but it's my team. And then it became anything but his team immediately after he signed it.
Jen, I know you're sitting around being like, man, this is just like me and my girlfriend. This is just so petty. I can't believe I'm covering the NBA, and we're talking about little stuff like he won a championship. They're all making a lot of money, but it becomes very, very important who's going to get credit. That's why I believe DeMarcus Cousins going to Golden State Warriors, it will create issues. Why? Because these guys want credit. LeBron James coming back to Cleveland, it created a problem in their best player, in Kyrie Irving. So in this report, I believe there's a lot of things in here that are very, very factual. But the human side of things and trying to figure out the psyche of NBA players, I know it's hard to believe, but it's all true. These are very, very temperamental, very sensitive people. And certain guys, they don't want a whole bunch of other great players because they want credit. And that's what you could see as a constant theme in what we hear about comments about Kyrie.
I'll tell you this. You know who, if they listened to this 3-hour radio show or podcast, should have been terrified, might be too strong, but damn close? Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens, the Boston Celtics. Because you cannot simply say, Kyrie's the type of guy, if we're winning, he'll want to stay. If it's the best basketball situation for him, he'll want to stay. It's if Kyrie, when LeBron got there, Kyrie's 22 years old, never been to a playoff game. If the idea, I understand.
We don't need him.
Right.
What was the best record and the highest standing Kyrie had without LeBron?
33 wins was the best they had ever done.
Oh, no, we don't need them.
21, 24, 33. They didn't have
It was still 82-game schedule, right?
Yes, there was no lockout season involved there.
Oh.
I mean, so if people want to make the argument, I understand why Kyrie wanted to leave eventually. They also talk about it in here. He thought about demanding a trade right after they won the title. Before the Warriors even had Kevin Durant. When you think we're going to be the favorites to go win it again. And it's not, by the way, it's not like Kyrie was an unimportant piece of the championship.
Of the title. It wasn't like he was a role player. He had a huge hand in winning that title. They put their differences aside, whatever those were behind the scenes, to come together and win a title. They could have won more.
He had a 40-point game in Game 5 of the NBA Finals. 40-point game in the Finals. And then he hits the shot. And like so the Celtics have to look at this and say, we can't assign regular logic to what Kyrie will do in this offseason. And the point that I was making throughout the playoffs, which is the level of attention in the Boston market, that, not the excellent fast food chain, but the Boston media market that Jason Tatum is getting, I really felt like is going to rub Kyrie the wrong way.
You still don't think that the Celtics are Kyrie's team through and through? That there's a chance that people could see it.
Tell us what's happened that make him his team.
Okay, so up until he went out with the knee surgery, up until then, that wasn't Kyrie's team?
No, they were. But
okay, so he'll be back at the start of next season.
Before the knee injury, Jason Tatum and them had them hurt. They were just good rookies. Oh, nice season. I remember us talking about him early. He was shooting 42% from three. Well, that's going to come down into the 30s. Well, it didn't come down as much as we thought. And it was backed up by critical playoff performances by him, Jaylen Brown, also Rozier as the backup point guard. Like, you have to consider all those things.
And it's not as if Kyrie went to Boston and all of a sudden his stats exploded. Like, he averaged more points per game his last year with LeBron than he did last year with Boston. So he doesn't even have that part going for him where it's like, well, now I'm a 30-point-a-game guy. No, you know, it's 25 in last year in Cleveland, a little under 25 in your first year in Boston.
Kyrie is very lucky that he got traded to Boston. He went from a winning team to a winning team. He could very easily end up at a half a dozen teams that he would, he'd be the star, but they wouldn't make the postseason. It would be miserable.
You say, hold on, those two, I think it's a great point because he didn't have a no trade. They could have sent him anywhere. But those last two sentences you said, I don't think are necessarily true. Yes, they could have missed the postseason. No, I'm not certain that would have made him miserable.
No.
When you put on your list of teams,
these guys are different, man. I mean, these guys are different. They want to make money, but they want the light to be on them. They want the spotlight. They want to be quoted. Yes, they want the franchise to say, man, whose franchise is that? Well, that's Kyrie's, but he's in Sacramento. They would be much more willing to live with that.
Well, we haven't even talked about Sacramento. What if he went to Sacramento? Then you don't get the spotlight. No one's talking about you unless you're in the greater Sacramento area.
Sacramento was probably the worst. Like, it is. I mean, if we're ranking 1 through 30, there are.
I think that Kyrie thinks he's the type of basketball player that is a generational basketball player, regardless of where he is. They would be talking about. He was in Cleveland before. There was no LeBron. There was no Kevin Love. They were in Cleveland winning 20, 30 games.
And he was happy enough. He wanted to re-up there and was excited about it and disappointed.
And NBA fans were in love with his game. He has a very infectious type of game.
And so, like, all of this is, I recommend everyone check it out. Like, they confirmed that Kyrie threatened to have surgery before the year. Now, we found out his knee was actually a little worse than we thought it was because he ended up needing surgery eventually anyway. But the whole thing is just, I mean, it's, to me, from an outside observer, it's a little gobsmacking. But if he wanted to be the star, they added the one player that guaranteed no matter how well he played, he wasn't going to be the star.
All right, we'll take a break there. Coming up, is Carmelo Anthony on the verge of teaming up with LeBron and the Lakers? That's next on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, we are joined by Yahoo Sports NBA insider Jordan Schultz. Good morning, Jordan.
Good morning, Jenna.
This is an important appearance for Jordan because there's a long list of people that have made one appearance on First Things First.
Right.
It is a much shorter list of people that have made 2 or more appearances on First Things First.
Yeah.
This is your second one. Welcome back.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Great to be back.
Absolutely. What up, C? You look like you have jokes ready.
Bro, we got you covered. You keep dropping NBA knowledge on his head, and you'll be coming back.
Especially if it's Bron.
Come on. Talk to me.
We
gave him an extension, bro.
Carmelo Anthony's one-year experiment with the Thunder is coming to a close as the two will reportedly split later this summer. Yahoo Sports' Jordan Schultz, anybody know him, has reported the Lakers are one of Melo's preferred destinations in hopes of playing with his friend LeBron James. Another possibility, the Rockets. Chris Paul recently advocating for Houston to go after Carmelo Anthony. Jordan, how does this play out? Where does Carmelo end up playing next season?
Well, I think it's a 2-horse race between the Lakers and the Rockets. And what he has to figure out is where can he win a championship? Or where does he have the best chance to win a championship? Right now, it's Houston. And obviously, the Rockets lost Trevor Ariza. They need somebody to come in and make shots. Carmelo last year, 36% from 3, was obviously pretty bad in the playoffs, had a negative 14 plus-minus rating last year. However, he made a career-high 169 threes. So if he wants to come in and get catch-and-shoot opportunities, the Rockets might actually be the best bet. Although you could say the same thing about LeBron with the Lakers. They just don't have the pieces, as we know, in place right now to contend.
Right. All right, so I can totally, not that he needs to, but confirm that these are the only 2 places Carmelo is going to end up next year. I think some people would look at the Rockets and say, man, that analytics-based team that needs to be very stretchy on defense, that is really the one team that we think can compete with Golden State, they're not going to be interested in Carmelo Anthony. They might be a little interested in Carmelo Anthony. I don't think it'd be immediate. And whichever team he would, because he's getting $28 million from the Thunder, it would be for the league minimum, I would imagine, because he's already getting the max contract from the Thunder. What Melo could do for the Rockets is what he refused to do for OKC, which is provide bench scoring. Yeah. Like if he could be a guy that you can 3 minutes a quarter in the first half, run the offense through 3 minutes in the end of the first quarter, 3 minutes in the end of the third quarter, and then be a piece the rest of it, then there is at least some upside there. The reality is Melo in the playoffs was abysmal. You mentioned three-point shooting, but in the playoffs, listen, he was dead last. Of the 59 guys took at least 25 threes in the playoffs. He was dead last. In the playoffs, I think 69 guys took as many shots as him. He was third to last. Like, he was bad in the regular season. He was terrible in their abbreviated playoff run.
And this is what I get concerned about. He's going to be in the playoffs again.
Yes.
Because in the playoffs, what happens to jump shooters, it's their legs. Carmelo Anthony's body, it's shot. Like, it's shot. Like, he fooled us last year in the summer. He lost some weight. Hoodie Melo. He was going around New York beating up on people. Wasn't an NBA player. A couple times he had a video. Chris Paul was in a couple. But he was beating up on people here in the streets of New York. What is he going to do late in the season? And the reason why I don't believe he's a good fit, I believe he should go to Houston, but he's not a good fit, is when you are a volume scorer since AAU days, Carmelo Anthony is always one in the high school rankings, one of the best players, college, one of the best players, straight jump shooter. When you're playing 3 to 5 minutes, you can't score in the same capacity. So he doesn't know how to be a role player. He doesn't know how to. Man, how do I still get my shots within the flow of the game? Because I'm not used to these reduced minutes. It's just like Boogie Cousins. He's never really gotten along with his teammates. Now, all of a sudden, he's in the best situation like Melo would be in, and you think he's going to go back on something that he can't do, being a role player? I can't depend upon that.
Here's the reason why I think the Lakers and the Rockets are the 2 teams that would be interested in him, and the reason that I think that there's at least the possibility for it. It's his two of his best friends in the league are the stars there. I know James Harden's probably the star of the Rockets, but Chris Paul's one of them. LeBron, obviously, the star of the Lakers. I think it's hard to defer to a younger player who isn't your guy. And that's what he was asked to do with Russ. And he deferred somewhat, but not enough for the Oklahoma City. I think it's easier when it's guys you have 15-year relationships with, which is what he has with LeBron and with Chris Paul.
This is the other thing, though. But your buddy you got the relationship with, he's still a star. So you're not getting that star treatment. Yeah. It's like you go to a restaurant, people like, hey, man, that's Nick Wright. Can I get your autograph? You're like, man, Nick's always in a lot better mood. The other time, it's like, hey, that's Chris Carter. Nick's like, man, what the people like? But he should be used to that because he's just now coming up. Carmelo's always been that. And we just can't forget like what people are used to being. When you are a star, I haven't heard Carmelo say, you know something, I'm ready at this stage in my life to be a role player. They asked him last year, do you want to be a backup?
And he laughed.
He's like, no. So why all of a sudden, Jordan, will he now want to be a backup?
Because he's never been to an NBA Finals. This is the opportunity for him to do that. Why can't he at least be Team USA Melo? Spread the floor, make threes, don't put the ball on the deck, at least try a little bit defensively, which is not something he's been known to do, but give them something because they lose Ariza, who's a legit 3-and-D guy. But Melo is somebody that can make shots. And I completely agree with you. He shot 40% last year, way down. But if he gets with the Rockets and they're spreading the floor with pick and roll, spread pick and roll, he can be Team USA Melo at 34 years old.
You could do that in 3- and 5-minute increments?
Well, maybe listen, that was just my it's not like that's
to a degree, I think he can get those.
He
can get good looks with Houston that he might not get with the Lakers, and that he certainly didn't get with the Thunder, where he shot 35% on catch and shoot last year.
I also think one thing we got to recognize about when you go and play with Russ is this. Because Russ is going to unapologetically play his game, and I think this is one of the reasons Paul George was attracted to staying there, Russ is not the type of NBA star that is going to critique a teammate's game and say, you need to be doing this. Because he don't want nobody critiquing his game. Russ can't tell anyone shoot less threes or take higher percentage shots because he's Russ. I do think that if there's anybody in the league that could say to Melo, this is what we need from you, it'd be LeBron or Chris Paul.
CP, for sure.
I think one of those two guys. But let me ask you this, because I think this is maybe at the heart of your opinion on this. Let's say you get the perfect mindset. The Melo is totally bought in on everything they ask him to do. You'd still be hesitant because you think that his body is shot to a degree that he's no longer an effective player on both ends.
I think most people think that.
He's not a winner. Like, we give him this credit like he's some type of winner, like he's some force multiplier in the locker room. You talk about Russ, Melo's been the same way. How much of his game has he changed? Oh, he changed. He's a little slower, but that's because of wear and tear. When you are not a star, it is hard to come to that. You guys talk about CP3 and LeBron trying to tell him what to do. He's trying to make his body do stuff his body can't do anyway, let alone hearing from one of his buddies. You know something? When we were friends, you used to be a lot more athletic.
Yeah, but when I'm told that a source close to CP he says he's advocating for Melo to come, that at least presents the opportunity, CC, that maybe Chris Paul would tell Melo, and maybe Melo would actually be receptive, that if he's going to go to Houston, would he at least try to listen?
I just don't believe in it. The best way to predict future behavior is past behavior. So he is a jump shot. He's a volume scorer. All these other things, hadn't been a great locker room guy. You guys have to show me all this stuff because he fooled me last year. All right,
he must know this before he embarks on the Lakers, or he's got to know this before he goes in, that he's not walking into a situation like Boogie where he's just going to be a star like he was.
Just lastly, real quick here. Also, I think it's important to note that he was off on the playoffs, but what he gave you in the regular season, if you were getting that for $7 million a year, which, by the way, is more than what either of these teams will pay, they'd have been happy. The reason Melo was an albatross for them was because he was making $27 million. And so I think Melo, it's not that Melo no longer had any NBA value. It's that he was grossly overpaid as a max contract guy.
All right, we got to take a break. Jordan, stick around. Coming up, how scared should the rest of the NBA be of Boogie and the Warriors? That's next. This is First Things First. Jordan, let's talk Boogie Cousins.
Let's do it.
And the Warriors. Boogie says there are adjustments to be made this season and that there are games where he might only take 4 shots. which has happened just 4 times in his 535-game career. Here's Boogie Cousins on the future of the Warriors.
The potential is scary. I mean, that's obvious. But, of course, it's going to take a lot of hard work and dedication and also a lot of sacrifice from not only myself but, other guys on the team as well. So, and I think that's something that we all are aware of. And, that's something we accepted already. And I think that's why these guys wanted me to also be a part of this team. And like I said, the potential is scary.
Jordan, it's not a small sacrifice he's talking about. No. He's going to have to take his playing time way down and be okay with it to fit into this Warriors team. How do you think he fits in with Golden State?
Well, why don't we go back a little bit just first? Because before that torn Achilles, there was really no question that the Pelicans were going to give him a 5-year max. Then he gets hurt. AD plays like an MVP. They sweep the Blazers, and all of a sudden, he's expendable. And for me, when I look at DeMarcus Cousins, he is an unbelievably talented player. But like what CC was saying with Melo, there are issues in the locker room. And if you ask people around the league, DeMarcus is actually well-liked, but he's immature, and he has never won. And I think what happened with Sacramento was that I think he got so sick of losing and that losing culture, and I think that just continued to spiral domino effect. If he goes to the Warriors, now it's an opportunity for him to, A, show he come back healthy, B, show that he's, and this is maybe more importantly, a good teammate, and then C, be a winner. Because he's never won. Just like Carmelo, he's never won, as great of a player as he is. So he can do all those things, play fewer minutes, get back healthy, and then next summer get it back.
And when you say just like Carmelo, this is a far worse situation for him. Like Melo, who took a team to the Western Conference Finals, been in the playoffs a bunch. Boogie is, you could argue, the most talented and accomplished NBA player ever to never play in a playoff game. And
second most points ever to never be in a playoff.
Okay, so we're talking about an extreme having never won. Listen, Boogie signed up for this. That last part of that sound was very interesting. Because he says, the quote you read, the headlines you read, a lot of sacrifice. And then there's a whole lot of we's. We signed up for this. Everyone knows there's going to be a lot of sacrifice. Man, I'm not certain how much sacrifice the other guys on the team signed up for here. Like, Steph already sacrificed winning any more MVPs, most likely, in adding Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, you can argue, sacrificed his numbers to a degree. He's obviously had it paid back to him. Clay was asked, remember when they added Kevin Durant? And they said, what changes for you? And he said, not bleep. Said, I'm still going to get my shots. If you look at his numbers, by the way, he takes the same amount of shots no matter what. Like, Clay is a metronome. He's just going to, same thing. And so who is... Because Andre Iguodala did real sacrifice for this team. Come off the bench. You have your stats, your career numbers, totally averages undercut.
And he did it.
And he did it. He won a Finals MVP. Even after winning the Finals MVP, he said, good thing, or else I'm going to beat up Steve Kerr. Like, that's the level of sacrifice.
It's easy to sacrifice after you've won, after you've been paid your money. Neither one of these things he's done. And sacrifice, this is not something that Boogie Cousins is used to. I remember people talk about the days when we drafted Randy Moss. People forget that Jake Reed and myself had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons together, an NFL record. So while I was on the phone and somewhat maybe acting as if I was very, very happy to have Randy Moss, I was on the other phone with Jake Reed because Jake Reed was like, listen, man, I ain't getting ready to come off the field. So you always have these situations. Everyone just thinks it's easy. I've been telling you for over 6 months, it's harder to play with good or great players than it is with role players or players not as talented. Why? Because they depend on you. There's less balls to go around when there's more talented people. You looked at me, you're like, Chris, you're crazy. There's no way it's harder. Okay, well, let's watch Boogie Cousins.
Listen, I think my issue was, like, define harder. Harder in what way? Like,
let's just use Boogie.
Like, emotionally.
Basketball.
More taxing.
Sports is emotional. Like, we can't remove emotion, say, hey, you know something? If he wasn't emotional, yeah, a lot of the athletes would be different. But sports is emotional, and it's harder to play with the great players and a great team than any other situation that Boogie Cousins has been in. This is not the great team Kentucky because they're all up-and-coming young players. I'm talking about guys that have already sacrificed and guys that have already had made careers. I don't see them sacrificing for Boogie. Why? For 1 year? Boogie's going there as a hitman for 1 year and leave. Why would Iggy sacrifice for him? Why would Draymond and them sacrifice that much for him? See, so I think there's other equations in this that people are not thinking about.
And what you're saying is what we've heard with LeBron. as great of a player as he is, and he's fantastic, that it is very difficult to go play with LeBron James in the sense that the challenge is enormous because the pressure is enormous. And I think when you're DeMarcus Cousins, now there's 25 All-Stars, 25 combined All-Star games on that roster. Is he going to be willing to come back in December, January, and play 20, 25 minutes a game and not get 25 and 15? Is he going to be willing to do that?
Is he?
I don't know. If he's not,
he has no choice. Those numbers aren't even available.
But here's the
They're not
thing.
available.
If he is not happy about the opportunity this presents him and not excited about, listen, I'm going to go there, I'm going to repair my reputation, I'm obviously winning a ring, and real quick, if those things aren't attractive to him, then he made an asinine decision. Then, it's not like he got traded to Golden State.
Because he knows what he signed up for. It was laid out for him.
The only argument for this is he didn't sign there and then all of a sudden Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson got traded to the team. He knew exactly what he was walking into. You didn't draft Randy Moss. The team you were on drafted Randy Moss. You follow what I'm saying? He signed up for this.
This was an emotional decision, Nick. He was disappointed in free agency. The rejection of not getting the big offer. Also, Julius Randle was coming to New Orleans. So there was a sense of panic. He talking about, oh, this was my chess move. No, this was desperation. Oh, he's trying to get back at the NBA. And this is the thing that you're missing. Boogie Cousins don't think he's a bad guy. You can't change when you don't think you're a bad guy. And he does not think that. So there's an issue right there as far as being self-aware.
We're also just assuming that he's going to come back from a torn Achilles and be the same player close to it. That's not necessarily the best assumption. I think he's the kind of guy, because he's not overly, athletic, doesn't rely on leaping. I think he can, but I'm just saying.
That does help him, yes.
I think that helps him. But I think as a guy that his game is not necessarily the modern-day NBA game, because he's not going to protect the rim. He's not going to run the floor. And, he does a lot of isolation stuff, which is great. He's a great player. But to your point, tepid expectations for a guy that is coming back from a torn Achilles, and tepid expectations because he did not have free agency, buzz. Teams were very concerned about this.
Plus, it also takes time and games to come in and find chemistry with other players and figure out rhythms and whatnot. And he's already coming in late, whatever it is, January, February, when this team is already going to be knee-deep in their
If you watch continuity in basketball, the worst continuity is watching the NBA All-Star game. And that's what the Warriors are going to be like, especially once Boogie is inserted into the lineup, because they won't have.
They'll just cut him.
They won't have a lot of up and down on the court.
No.
All right. So when you watch the NBA All-Star game, watch the beginning of it. There's a lot of talent, more talent on the court than we're used to. But trying to put it all together to build win. Well, you got a problem with that?
No, I just think it's the NBA All-Star game doesn't have a team that just swept through the NBA. Those guys all played together. What they are replacing is Kevon Looney, JaVale McGee, and Zaza with Boogie. Yes, there will be an adjustment.
Boogie's objective is to get a big contract. It's not about winning games.
Well, then
that's why he came there.
See, I think but he could have gone a lot of places and put himself in position to get a good contract. Or this is the best place he can go to win. I think he went there to win and is a bleep you to the NBA. If he acts, let me put it like this: if he acts a fool there, he's crazy. It will make no sense. This is exactly what he knows. You talk about athletes knowing how hard it is to play with great players.
Have you ever watched Boogie Cousins play a game and after he got thrown out, you say, that dude crazy? So now you come to the same conclusion you're saying right now.
Yeah, I think there's difference, but I think there's different types of crazy, but sure.
Last word, Jordan.
I just think there's more pressure on him than at any point in his career at 26 years old, because if he can't win in this situation, and I mean win by being a good teammate and win games, then he's never going to do it.
Jordan, let me tell you, there's no difference in being crazy. Crazy is crazy.
Jordan,
I'm going to lean with CC on this, but I'm going to lean mellow with Nick. So
awesome. Just leaning all over the place.